All right, guys, in this video, we did want to put the disclaimer out there that we are going to be talking about sex. We are going to be using words of the anatomy that include female body parts as well as male body parts. Some of the usages of our language could be lewd in this video compared to what you guys are used to. Some of it is for humor and effect. Some of it is just the descriptive and graphic nature of the subject matter. If you are not interested in that subject matter, please consider looking at the description. We will provide a time code that jumps past all of the lewd and sexual discussion. Let's get on with the video, guys.
Happy thoughts, happy thoughts.
Happy thoughts, happy thoughts, happy thoughts. Welcome to the CodeX Cantina, where this is a moment that Crypto and I both need, because this has been a rough week for both of us. So
yes,
we should just let the drinking begin, right? Like, let's not put this off any further.
Toast to you, sir. We may have to pause the video, folks, and get extra drinks.
All right, so where are we this week with Wizard and Glass? We continued off from where we left last time with just kind of basically starting off the story, but we didn't have many discussion items for it. And we told everybody we were going to get through part 3, chapter 6. Unfortunately, Crypto and I had a terrible week this week, and we only made it through part 3, chapter 4. So we stopped at Merlin's Rainbow, where they kind of, you guys have already read if you're reading along, where they learn about Merlin's Rainbow, which is actually okay, because I think that's actually a good stopping point for us to shove that off into next week, because I know I'm going to bring up Palantirs finally for next week with that. And I think if I don't do it this week, I'll definitely do a Shakespeare comparison. We'll see what we get to this week. But we got a lot of banging this week, Crypto.
So I think that this is the talk, right?
Well, to be fair, I looked it up actually, and I didn't see anyone talking like there's so much teenage angst sex in this part, and nobody talks about it. And I think that's either because it's kind of embarrassing to talk about for some people.
Sure,
it could be maybe they don't feel equipped to have that conversation, and it arguably could be maybe they don't want to have that talk because they feel like they could be demonetized. Well, welcome to the CodeX Cantina. We don't give a shit about any of that stuff. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me.
Yeah. So I think that, tonight is the talk, and I think that we can look at this from several different aspects of the way that King sexualizes his characters, the way that he writes lovemaking, and the way that this is, I think, a driving force of the story. It feels like it is very much a plot device at certain times.
Yeah, absolutely a plot device at certain points. It didn't become apparent to me until this book, though. Like, it was in every single book in terms of Roland in the first one, in terms of Odetta at the time and Eddie in the second book on the beach, right? And they had that wonderful lobster dinner, which we talked about the metaphor there. The third one, we had Detta, Susanna now, getting hard attacked by this demon. Like, they talked about the icicle pierce of him entering her. Kind of the most graphic version of sex in this book series. And then now we have
the sweet lovey-dovey one.
All over the place, right? Like banging, 15, 16-year-old kids banging all over the place. Which, hey, parents out there, spoiler alert, some kids that are teenagers are having sex. Like,
hopefully they're having protected sex and being smart about it.
Yeah, Midworld, it's not super big on the condom. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that some of the things that he writes well in here, and some of the things that I definitely have grievances with, and that's one of the things too, is Roland isn't a deadbeat dad. She immediately says, I could already be pregnant with your child. Are you going to take care of me and this kid? And he says, yeah, without a doubt. And so, I mean, Roland is our knight in shining armor, and, he's the good guy of the story. But I think that's written very, very well, that, that this person is owned up in the story, that he would take care of Susan and the kid and stuff, and that's good.
And I know how some viewers react. They heard you say you condone that activity, which is not what Crypto said. Crypto said, whether you agree with it or not, the premarital sex and the kid, what he said was good was that he stepped up to the task, is what Crypto said.
Yeah, he didn't abandon this, lady in the time of need.
Well, he's stepping up to be a prototypical, depending on your worldview of what you think a man should do, provider. He says, yes, I'm going to be there. No, I'm not going to leave you, right?
And I think that kind of takes the other point of that's how he's writing Susan as well, because she asks him for the help. She asks him to take care of her. And that says something about Stephen King as well, of how he writes women in his stories. He makes her the damsel in distress, and that's going to piss some people off. And that's okay. You can get mad at that situation, but that's the way King is writing his, Lord of the Rings story here.
Is there any question at all that this is written by a man? Out of curiosity, like if you didn't know this was Stephen King, is there any way you could read how relationships were presented here and not know that it was probably a male author?
I think it's pretty obvious. Again, I'm not a woman, so I can't really speak to that, but I think it's pretty evident that he is hypersexualizing women left and right in this, from the gunslinger, to what's her face in Tall, Maddie? No, what's her name?
Allie.
That was close. From Allie all the way to Susan here, he's doing that to his female characters. So I think it's very, very obvious. Now, maybe a female author would do that and could do that, certainly. But I just think it's very apparent the way that he writes those characters.
Well, I don't think you have to excuse yourself for being a man to make an estimate as to whether it's a male or female author. Obviously, we have different experiences. To me, the biggest tell was, I feel like this whole honesty, virginity thing with I feel like, was this when did this come out? 97? Is this
97, 98? Yeah, because I was 17, 18. We talked about that.
We knew how the hymen worked back then, right? We knew it wasn't like this huge sheet of saran wrap over the vagina. We knew it was we knew it's this circular thing around, right? And it's not like if you have sex, it just pierces this blood bath to come rushing out. This is written.
This isn't Freddy Krueger.
This is written very. I feel like not fully understanding when that happens or how often that happens. I don't know. It feels medieval, but I guess at the same time, it is kind of a steampunk pre-technology type feel. I guess I don't know.
But it's dramatized, and I think that's the problem. And it's, again, very much written from a male perspective, I think, and not necessarily a positive male perspective. And again, I've said many times, Stephen King is one of my favorite authors, but I will take jabs at him when I think that, he's kind of writing like a douche. And in this case, there's a point where Roland tells her, I can't be with you if you've been with another man. So if you sleep with the mayor, I can't be with you. And she's like, well, then if you love me, make me a woman. And so that way you can be with me forever. And he's like, no, I'm not going to let you break your promise because that's more important. And she's very conflicted. But Roland is a huge hypocrite. He's already had sex. He's not a virgin, but the woman has to be a virgin. That's pretty messed up. And to boot, he had sex with a prostitute, and not for love or an actual committed relationship. And again, not saying that's bad, but I just think that is totally written, from a hypocritical male perspective, which you can take as positive or negative, but it's very apparent.
Some people may disagree, and that's fine.
Sure. Yeah. No.
Totally. Let me throw more evidence. I agree with you personally. Let me say why I agree with you, because I feel like I can pull out some specific instances where if you don't agree, that's fine. But here's where I think I would put specific instances that kind of support that. So one is, it's very, to your point, it's very male subservient, right? It's Roland's rules for how this relationship's going to move forward, right? She's pleading to him for that. I feel like number 3 was an attempt at empowering a woman, like with Odetta and the demon, how she grabbed onto the demon's ice, cock, if you will, and she wouldn't let go and rode it and made him kind of be like, oh God, please stop. But the problem is that is not an emotional scene, right? That's a graphic scene where there's no emotion involved. And the problem is that this was transactional based too. This was her doing it for the sole purpose of distracting the demon while this happens. So
Yeah, to protect Eddie.
Which I think we didn't complain too much on it, because one and done isn't a pattern. I feel like I think we did have a little bit more of a, because 2 was emotional, right? That was an expression, a transaction, mutual, consensual, that sort of thing. Number 1 with Roland was transactional as well. So we didn't have on-off, we had kind of an on-off pattern. But in here, in this one, you'll notice what Coral did. Remember when Coral, was it Jonas that she was banging in this one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She said that she'd spread her legs edge to edge of the bed, and she doesn't just lie there. Like this feels like I'm screaming male fantasy pandering is what it is. Hang on too. We're coming off as negative. We love this book. Like, I feel like we're really coming down negative. We like this book, but if everyone out there is going to be afraid to talk about this, that's where we're going to go. Like,
I think it's fair to critique these things, because this can be concern, and again, as a 17-year, 18-year-old, I don't think my parents would have cared me reading this, but if this is pandering to, my 17-year-old libido of how this actually works in the real world, I might be susceptible to that as a 17-year-old who's impressionable. And I think that's important to bring up. And there's a lot of there's a lot of sexual violence in this too. I mean, Susan is assaulted several times in this book,
right,
by the mayor, and that's something that is just kind of blown off too by the women characters in the story. That's how the world works, sweetie. Life's rough. Get used to it. Like, no.
I had a out loud facial verbal reaction when he squeegeed her up from behind.
It's a terrible description.
That's what he did. He squeegeed her from behind.
That's terrible. Quote of the night. You win this one, sir.
and I had this reaction of just like, yeah. So I think a combination of using it as a tool, just really misrepresenting, I feel like, the hymen. Now, with that said, okay, so let's talk about this book specifically. While there's tons of it, and the squeegee was graphic and brutal, right? Some of the lovemaking actually is quite short, and I won't say it's eloquent or good, but it's decent, right? Like, Roland and Susan aren't, like, when you read those scenes, you're not like, oh my God, that's horrible. You're just like, yeah, we're doing this again. Like, we're in young infatuation mode where that's all we do, like rabbits, basically, all the time. And I thought it was kind of, this is a very subtle one, but I'll give full credit to this one, where I think it was the first time that they did it. And after I was immediately appalled at his misunderstanding how a hymen works, assumption, he talks about the moss turning red, which the moss being a plant at the same moment that he deflowered her, that's when the blood hit the moss. I thought that was somewhat elegant of a blood covering a flower at the moment of deflowering her. Not that I think this is something that I write down as the best example ever, but I took that as a subtle nod of, I'm like, I think he did that on purpose.
I took it a little bit different, but okay. I like yours better.
No. Tell me how you took it. I'm curious to hear what you said.
He wasn't being crude. I thought it was written pretty well, but I thought moss was to represent her pubic hair.
No, I think that's what it is.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. Okay.
And this was her virginity going away,
yeah,
and the popping, the deflowering of it. Yeah. Right.
I just think it's a little bit embellished.
It
I don't
is.
think it works that way.
It like like Saran wrap, baby. You just punch right through.
Jesus. Yeah. So there is that aspect of the book, and it's interesting that we gravitate towards, discussing that when there's a lot of other things to talk about. I mean, you can talk about the political intrigue here and the story and this and that, but I think that's some of the best talking points of this section of the book is, why does King write that way? Or why does he think readers want to read that? Is he pandering to, 17-year, 18-year-old boys when they're reading this? And
yeah. Well, it's like we said, this I think still is up there. We got to finish it as potentially my favorite of the Dark Tower series that I've read. I've only read the first 4 if this is your first time turning in. but there are cringy moments, and it's easy for us as readers to sweep that stuff under the rug. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And just because we want to shine, we want to highlight that, doesn't mean that we dislike it. I still really like this book. I don't know. How are you feeling about like? I still really like this book.
No, I'm loving this book. I forgot how much of this book that I forgot. I really like. I think it's a decent love story. I like the action in the book. I like how the book itself is talking about the symbology of what's going on in the story using castles, and which is, I think, their version of checkers. And I really think that's cool in the story of how he's talking about how him and the big coffin hunters are playing checkers, and it's like a cat and mouse game of who's moving into position to attack first, and who makes the first move is potentially the person that could lose or win the biggest. And it's almost like a mystery novel too, of how they're trying to unravel with the oil, what's going on there, and there's the magic element and Rhea, and I mean, I love this book. And again, you're getting so much of the backstory of young Roland when he's in his prime, and he's youthful, and he's energetic, and he still has love and hope. No, this book is amazing. We're just nitpicking a few of the things that I think, should be addressed, because that's what we do here at the Codex Cantina.
I think it's okay to pick those. So okay, let's jump into, it was in this section too, the good, bad, and the ugly scene, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie Anna?
I don't think so.
I don't think you have to go out of your way, but I think if you see it like for free to pick up, or if it's on Netflix, I think I'd check it out. But I loved in the opening scenes where Shimi spills upon, what was this dude's name? DePape? There was a DePape that he spilled on? And you have the cutbacks. It was like a movie, the way he wrote these, like, so easy to convert this into the screen. The way that the way that new information kept coming out on these characters about where this character was. Eldris. The way that Jonas was outside kind of looking, and then you get the view that Roland was behind, and then you get the view that Jonas looks around and doesn't see anyone. And the way they just constantly one-up each other, it's cliche, of course, in the good, the bad, and the ugly, kind of an homage, if you will. But I really enjoyed the way that was done. And it reminds me of the movie Anna, where you're presented with a scene, much different, but then the scene gets presented again from a different character's point of view, where more information is revealed, and it completely changes, I think, your feeling and understanding of that situation. And I think while it was a very big homage, and hey, maybe some people think it's cliche, I loved that scene with the way that it just kept flipping back and forth, and who had the high hand, and he's just like, okay, drop your gun. And this guy at a disadvantage, I don't know if it was Elaine or Cuthbert at this point, but they're just like, no.
No, Cuthbert had the slingshot and said no.
Yeah, and he's just like, no, I'm not going to put it down. And it's just like a total shock of like, oh my gosh, this guy has a set of balls on him. Like,
yeah. Oh, he's a kid too. He's like, wait a minute, you're a little kid with a slingshot. You can't say no to me. I have a gun.
Love that scene, right? Oh my gosh.
No, there's almost like one book, there's almost one scene per book that really just is so good. And a lot of times it's these homages, the bathroom scene with Eddie and Roland fighting, the shootout at Tull, the fight with the bear, and then the riddles with Blaine, and then this one here, the Mexican standoff. It just screams, put me on a TV screen. Put me on Netflix. Put me on HBO. Because I could see the camera cuts here of like going back to Shimi scream, shaking on the ground, and the cut to Cuthbert, and then you have like the cut and the camera pulls back behind Elaine, and then the camera cuts back to DePape, and then it cuts back to, and then it cuts back to, and it would be really cool to see on screen.
Right now, you bring up a point where something that kind of bugged me a little bit was there was a mistake in this section, where at one point the gun got slingshotted out of his hand, right? DePape's hand, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the scene, suddenly the gun was back in his hand when the cards got flipped.
Well, Roland made him pick it up.
I don't remember that, but here's another question. I'm starting to think about this more and more, and about remember how the characters kept seeing something, and I think it was Cuthbert that saw images of them banging again, and we talked about how earlier in the previous section we talked about this Westworld vibe that I was kind of feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm wondering if these are mistakes. I don't remember Rowling telling him to pick them up. Maybe I'm just way off and I've just made a mistake here, but I went back and looked because one of my notes that I never got to talk about. So when we do these chats, like I had a whole chat here about what is the formula of a romance novel, and we just completely skipped that. So I have tons of talking points and notes that I have that I never get to go to in these videos, right? But one of my notes from the second book was they talked about Roland's guns being ironwood, and then books 1, 3, and 1 and 4 for sure they talk about it being sandalwood. And we have Cuthbert kind of being Eddie, right? The jokester in the slingshot.
Right.
We've got Jake is Elaine, who they've got the touch, invisible touch. But yeah. They've got the shining, right? The touch is the shining where they can just kind of see things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And
see dead people.
And we've got kind of, I feel like Susanna and Susan. Like, is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, I mean, it's her namesake, so...
Yeah, and I know what happens later on, and there's some more things, hint, hint, in the next section that definitely makes those two the same. Where I just feel like something is happening where are these mistakes, or is Stephen King putting them there on purpose? Like this whole memory rewriting thing where the glitch in the matrix of the cat passing by twice with the ironwood and the sandalwood, are these universes colliding? Or what? Like, I know you can't spoil it, but am I completely off, or am I just noticing mistakes? Just give me that much information, because I know you've read the whole series.
You are good at drawing conclusions of what authors put in books. I will say that.
There's something going on. Do not leave it in the comments, please. I've never read this series, but... there's something going on with this tower breaking down and a glitch in the matrix. That's all I'm going to say about it at this point in time.
All right, guys, that sounds good. So if you like this, please subscribe, smash the like button. You know what to do. Leave us comments, but don't spoil anything for Una because he will cry, and I've seen him do worse. Thank you so much. Peace.
Una out.